Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. We are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives at activistpost.com. And also now proud to announce that we are members of the Liberty Radio Network as well. So you can check out our podcast along with a whole bunch of other Liberty flavored content, some good stuff at lrn.fm. Well, it's 10 a.m. Monday morning, and we are back once again. I am coming to you from the Live Free or Die state, New Hampshire, and we are also going to be broadcasting with my co-host who's here with me, and he is coming from Las Vegas. So we're trying to keep it decentralized. That's and I think that's going to be a theme of the show. Have a great show for you today. I just got back from Hong Kong from the CoinGeek bComm conference, which was I have to say I was very impressed, and it was a lot more than just a conference. We're going to talk about all of that as well as some of the insights that I brought back from the trip. It was a very insightful trip for me. So to help me get through all of that, very interesting day today, we're going to talk about the future of Bitcoin. And it's very important. So to help me get started with all of that and to get through all of that today is my good friend, co-host, and producer, Mr. Christian Race. Christian!
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. So today I want to do a wrap up of what happened in Hong Kong.
Cool.
I think that's key. And then I want to also talk about, I came away from this conference with a lot of insight. I think the last show that we had last week with Krista Rose was, I listened to it a few more times because one of the things is Chris is he's super brilliant guy, and I'm sitting here also trying to do the interviewing, and so when I listened back, I was like, okay, all right, wow. I mean, he talks at a very high level, but there's some great stuff in there, and it really, really made sense in terms of what I was able to pull back from out of the conference. So I want to go into that today. I want to talk about the conference, and I want to talk about my perception of what the future of Bitcoin is going to be. But,
Awesome.
As Jeff Paul, who's a co-founder of CoinText and Counter Markets, the editor, he always admonishes me that I need to explain to people why I'm going to tell them what it is that I'm going to tell them, right? So why is this important? And it's weird because, so a friend of mine who's a Misesian, right? He was a big fan of Mises and the Mises Institute, very well versed in Austrian economics. One time, sort of ribbing me, was saying, "Oh, just if I know what I'm gonna get if I'm watching your show because or maybe he was saying his son said something about oh, well, he's just gonna talk about Bitcoin, blah blah blah," and it's I guess I do talk a lot about crypto, but and Chris talking about it, me coming here to New Hampshire and seeing and experiencing people who are actually living on crypto, then going and having this experience in Hong Kong with basically what was the who's who of the BCH blockchain.
Right.
Everybody from pretty much all the major developers, all the way up and down, all the major miners, and then a good smattering of the major evangelists as well, which I was surprised about, that people, it was an expensive conference, and Hong Kong is not cheap, but people are dedicated and motivated, and they got out there. They were well rewarded by what it was, as you'll see. But, there's something greater there. And so before we get started, I want to talk about the why of this thing.
Okay.
All right? And so what I've come to realize is, and this is an unfolding revelation for me, right? So I've been working on my next book, which I've had the title for a while, and I've teased it on the show, and the title is Render Unto Caesar, okay? And it's a follow-up to self-ownership, but it's more about economics. It has to do with what is crypto savagery really, right? Which is the concept that I explored just right at the end. That's just on the tip of my understanding that I was just beginning slowly to explore at the end of self-ownership. And so but the story, render unto Caesar, I think that's maybe like a
Hmm.
good starting point. Like, where does that come from? So render unto Caesar's famous story from the Bible, from the New Testament. I
Yeah.
believe it's in three of the four Gospels. It might be in all four. So that it's like it's an important one. When you see the stories of Jesus that show up in multiple Gospels, okay, this was one that was important to the community for a very, very long time. So
Hmm.
and we started out talking about taxation is theft on the last episode, and this is Jesus answering that question. So basically, what happens in this story is Jesus is hanging around with his disciples, and two sort of spies from the Jewish temple show
Okay.
up. So they've been trying to catch this dude up, right? He's out, he's preaching. This is before he turns over the money changers' tables, before all this stuff goes down. So he's in Jerusalem, he's preaching, he's causing some problems, and they're trying to figure out, like, okay, can we kind of get this guy caught up in some trouble, like get him out the way, right?
Yeah.
So they come to him and they say, well, what do you say about taxes? Because Rome is in control at that time of Judea, right? Of that whole area is called Judea, and that's where the Jews live. And it's not called Israel at that time. So that region is Judea. Rome is in control. Obviously, that's who ends up putting him to death, right? Is the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. And
Hmm.
they come and they're asking, should we, as Jews, be paying taxes to Rome? So now there's a deep a book that I would really, really recommend is Reza Aslan's book Zealot. So he wrote a book
Okay.
about Jesus and kind of about Christianity, but more about Jesus, and then a book about, I guess you could say, about Muhammad, but also about Islam, which is called No God But God. I think both of those are two books that everybody should read. They're very, very readable. They're made for just a regular audience, but he's really getting into the historical Jesus, less about the person, but about the time, right? Because when you're hearing these stories, like, these stories are stories that also have a lot of context of the particular time. So
Okay.
you get what I'm saying? Like, the audience
Yeah.
of the story is going to understand the context of this whole. The audience of the story knows that Rome is in control of Judea. The audience of the story knows, like, how much the taxes are, like all of these things, right?
Hmm.
So you don't have to put all the background. So the background's not in the Gospels, right? So if you don't know the historical context that the people living at the time would have understood about it, you don't really
Gotcha.
understand the story,
Right.
right? You don't understand the damn story.
Hmm.
And what I've always found interesting is when you go back and look at, like, medieval art of biblical stories,
Hmm.
the characters are wearing medieval clothing,
Yeah.
right? Think about that.
So right. Yeah.
So
So
so they
they were
when
thinking
they
about it in
imagine
their.
the stories, they imagine the stories happening, like, in medieval times, like in Europe,
Hmm.
because the drawings are of, like, vegetation and animals and plants that are in Europe, where this
Right.
didn't take place in Europe.
It's kind of like if you were thinking about I Love Lucy, the show, like you couldn't
Right.
go there and imagine it in color, in high definition, and all that shit. Like
Right.
you would think of it as like, just one color, basic stuff. Like you can't really put yourself in that position with today's technology.
Exactly. Exactly, right. So the context of it is basically that the Romans are in control, but the Jewish elite, who is mainly, like, you could say, a priest class, is are the ones who are in control of Judea on behalf of the Romans, right? So the Romans are the military force, but sort of the administrative, day to day, and cultural leaders are,
Hmm.
that is all coming from, the the Jewish priests. And so basically
Okay.
they come to him, and these spies say, "Well, should we be paying taxes?" Right? Because Jesus is among there are these rebels, right, who are trying
Hmm.
to, they call them bandits. That's the direct translation. But there were a great many of them who were all about like, well, let's break the rule of the Romans, right? So they're kind of like the IRA or whatever. Yeah, this is, we have these. It's a nationalist struggle, right? There, fuck the colonizers. They should get out of our land and all of this, right? And
Hmm.
so there, and so Jesus is kind of put amongst this group, right? He's more of a thinker than a fighter. Many of them are like fighters. They've got men at arms, right?
Hmm.
But the powers that be are not really sure about this guy. And he's basically
Hmm.
put to death for that, right? He's put to death as a
Yeah.
bandit, as a rebel. And so they ask him, "What should we pay taxes? Should you be paying taxes?" And he says, uh, "Bring me a coin. Bring me a coin."
Hmm.
And they bring him a coin, and he says, "Whose face is on this coin?" And they say, "Well, that's Caesar's face. It's probably a denarii, right? Is probably the coin that they bring him." And he says, "Well, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render
Hmm.
unto God that which is God's." And the stories all say in the Gospels that the men went away amazed. It uses the term amazed, right?
Wow.
Now, that's maybe like confused, confounded, but what a good thing for him to say. Where he's like, and I think that it goes to the heart of where we're dealing with right now. That it's like, should I pay taxes? And it's like, well, pay taxes to whom? Right?
Hmm.
So it's like, pull the money out of your pocket.
Hmm.
Whose face is on it? It's the president of, it's a former president of the United States. It's a governmental thing. Well, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. But, and this is what Jesus is trying to say, is that he's like, but don't render unto Caesar anything that is not Caesar's. Like, and there's no government stamp on a Bitcoin.
Hmm.
It's not owned by anyone. So if you have Bitcoin in your pocket, well, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render unto God that which is God's. And
Hmm.
certainly, just render the Bitcoin unto who it belongs to. And who does it belong to? Well, it belongs to you, right?
Yeah, one of the things I was looking at with Bitcoin too was I really, really love the fact that there was no faces or no, I mean, there's kind of a brand, a network association there, but it's more of like you feel like you're a part of it type thing.
Well,
And
okay, so let's talk about that because that's really the why. And that's what
hmm.
is the most important thing about what Bitcoin represents. So when we think about how we define a nation, right? The borders of a nation, but more importantly, even going back further to like Roman times or
Hmm.
coming into the modern times, it's like, so you take the British Empire. How would you know if you were in the British Empire? Like, how would you? No, seriously, I'm asking you. Like,
Oh,
so imagine you're going back. There was a time when they said the sun never set on the British Empire. So it was like
uh-huh.
South Africa, India, Hong Kong, Afghanistan, uh, places in the Caribbean, like all of
Hmm.
this. So you would touch down somewhere. How would you know if you were in the British Empire?
I would say the currency.
Prime, number one, right?
Hmm.
Because the people might be speaking a different language, they might be wearing different clothing, like
Yeah.
all of this. But how do you know? And it's the same thing, that's the story of Jesus.
Hmm.
You wouldn't need to know anything else about Jesus. What the time was, where he was located, to say what government was in control of the region that Jesus was in just by hearing the render unto Caesar story.
Hmm.
Because he says, "Bring me a coin. Whose face is on the coin?"
Hmm.
It's the emperor of Rome. We know that Jesus is inside the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
Simple, right? Simple,
Right.
easy. And so, what does that? So now let's extrapolate that out. Extrapolate that out. So, what country are you in if you show up in a place and the currency that everyone is using is Bitcoin. So stop and
Yeah.
think about that. Stop
I
and think
mean,
about that. Because you're in a nation. You are within a milieu. You are within a consensual hallucination that says
mhm,
we are all a part of this particular culture, right?
right.
Now this is what has been important to me, and this is what has become more and more clear by going to this conference. And more clear by understanding what really we're breaking apart into when we are breaking apart into these blockchains. And what we're breaking apart into is we're breaking apart into what are going to be the new nations.
Oh man.
These are because in our day and age, nations are defined by economic zones. Think about the euro.
Yeah.
The eurozone. What defines the eurozone primarily is that they all use the same currency, the euro.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's like the country's borders between there have basically dissolved. If you move between one euro country and another euro country, the people who live within those countries, they could just travel freely. And that was the whole thing of the British wanting to do Brexit and wanting to like exit out from the euro.
Hmm.
Right? Like that was the whole point of that entire experience. Did I lose you again? I
Yeah.
lost you again on this thing. So
It's okay.
so this is the broader context that we're inside of. This is the broader context and this is the why, right? So this is what I wanted to start with. Let me get you back on here so that you can actually control this because we're going to go. Do you understand what I'm getting at with this? Am I making
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely,
That
absolutely.
like
And
this is
the
how we need to start thinking of this broader context is that what you should expect as these individual blockchains start to get more and more established themselves is that you should start to expect that the cultures between them start changing, right? That the cultures between them start separating. And so what I
gotcha.
saw was there have been up till now, there have been technological differences between the blockchains. What I saw at this conference was the beginning of the cultural differences
Yeah.
to emerge in big ways about what people value just as human beings interacting with one another. Again, it's like religion, the sacred and the profane. Like what's
Hmm.
sacred and what's profane. So I want to talk about today we're going to talk about and just drawing some distinctions. These are and it's more about cultural distinctions. So we're going to do a wrap up of this conference, but I think that some of there were some key things that occurred at this conference, all of which were in my opinion all of which are cultural phenomena surrounding the blockchain. So we're gonna go into that. Let's go ahead and go to news number one. All right, so let me lay the groundwork here for CoinGeek conference. This was just in Hong Kong, and it's the bComm conference. So the idea behind it was how do we spread adoption, particularly merchant adoption, toward Bitcoin Cash, which to be used as digital currency. It's not about hodling, it's not about speculation. That the move within this particular blockchain is how do we get into the most people's hands, and particularly how do we get people to start using it in commerce? And that's the way that we're going to move forward. So, luckily, a little wrap up video just came out. I believe it's there as CoinGeek. Christian, why don't you go ahead and show that, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Blockchain, Bitcoin, two words that have certainly shaken the entire globe in the last few years. Today in Hong Kong, we are witnessing the dawn of the new era with Bitcoin Cash as we connect the dots between BCH and B-commerce to give merchants, miners, and investors the competitive advantage over rising competition. My name is Stephanie, and welcome to the very first CoinGeek.com conference. The inaugural event set a one-of-a-kind conference for Bitcoin and commerce communities from all over the world.
We went for kind of like a VIP lounge kind of ambiance that's sort of differentiate us from some of the other events that have gone on. But the real point of the event is to start spreading the message about how Bitcoin, and specifically Bitcoin Cash, which is the only Bitcoin, can be used for merchants and create economic freedom for the great unbanked of the world.
Innovators, pioneers, you are the future of bComm.
The recent protocol upgrade last May 15 now enables the creation of ICOs. Jian Hu shared his optimism on these coins within this blockchain.
I believe the majority of the financial assets exist in the blockchain will not be ICO tokens anymore in the coming 5 to 10 years. And Bitcoin Cash should develop its programming languages, its scripting languages to support such kind of assets. If we can do it correct and fast, Bitcoin Cash will win the future of a crypto economy.
And to take part in this revolutionary economy, thought leaders gave the steps on how merchants and consumers alike can start integrating Bitcoin Cash into businesses and their daily lives.
First, I would tell a merchant, there's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing bad's going to happen. You can accept Bitcoin Cash, and even if you're afraid of volatility and like the Bitcoin Cash price, you can have it immediately converted. So there's nothing bad that's going to happen. The only thing that's going to happen could be good. It may take a while, but Bitcoin Cash will grow in usage, you'll attract. Most importantly, you'll be at the cutting edge. Do you want to be a follower or do you want to be a pioneer?
Tell your friends, tell your family, tell every business you frequent, hey, start accepting Bitcoin Cash, start using Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash is money for the world, and it brings more economic freedom to every single individual in the world. If you're using censorship to either protect or promote what's supposed to be a censorship-resistant money, you've missed the entire point of Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, censorship and bad people are never going to stop doing bad things anywhere in the world, so it's up to our job to build tools that just kind of make them irrelevant.
To make things even more exciting, Dr. Craig Wright introduced the atomic age of Bitcoin.
Well, we're already starting to work on building it, and we're going to slowly be putting these into different releases. People can start themselves now. The difference is, right now, people can start building this technology, but it'll be simpler and simpler over time. So today we can do it, but we want it so that my grandma can do this. We want simple coders, young kids, to build new applications and organizations. So it's a little way from that because we have to dumb it down a lot first. We have to make it so that you click something and the library works. You can do it now if you're really, really good and smart and a really great developer, or shortly, when we release the simple libraries for this, you'll be able to do it just as a front-end developer or something like this. You'll be able to point these libraries in and keep going.
To learn more about Bitcoin's atomic age and watch other exclusive videos from the conference, subscribe to CoinGeek.com.
Okay, so one of the things, if you're watching, one of the things that should stand out as you hear what the message is, over and over and over again, it's about empowering people. Whether it's talking about, that was the overarching message that I got, which for me was so different than any, it was just across every single person. So whether it was saying empowering, the individual consumer, or all the way up to we need to empower young, maybe not so inexperienced developers to decide to dip their toes into this, and this was where everybody's head was at. All of the thought leaders on that particular blockchain, that's where their head was at. I mean, you probably saw on there Amari Sachet, he's the main developer for Bitcoin ABC, which is the Bitcoin node that was the first Bitcoin Cash node that basically he just said, I'm going to do 8 meg blocks and here we go. And he was the first one. He's out there rocking a anarcho-capitalist hoodie during his presentation, which was like a keynote presentation. And so it's, you see, and that was why I looked and I'm like, oh, this is the beginning of a new culture. And the idea here, it felt a lot less like a conference and a lot more like a congress. And what I mean by that is this. So right before was Consensus in New York. Now, consensus has been around for a while, and it was particularly like, I guess, so that was that was last year. 2017 was when the New York agreement was made. It was made at consensus, and consensus was much more of a Congress. It was like where everybody in the space went, met with each other, exchanged ideas, had conversations. Now it's like 8,000 people showed up, most of whom I'm sure were noobs. It's in New York. You know that was all Wall Street people. You know, it's super expensive. I think it was like $3,000 a ticket, right? So you know that's all being paid by Goldman Sachs. Say something, dude. I want to make sure I can hear you. Say something. Oh,
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you muted?
Yeah, my buttons are all sticky, and
Okay.
I muted for a sec because I had a
I
cough.
was like, where's Christian? I see him, but I don't hear him. No, so I think that's more of a conference. But what I found interesting was like, so I'm thinking this during the time, and then they came out and announced that they are going to start doing. So Bitcoin Cash is going to have a hard fork, a planned hard fork every 6 months. Basically, there's going to be an upgrade every 6 months. It's going to be planned out way beforehand. And after the hard fork, right after the hard fork, there's going to be a CoinGeek week. I think it's with three different
Nice.
sections. I think it'll maybe be 5 to 6 days. But like there's three different sections. So there's like a devs only section at the beginning, which I think is awesome. Then there's like the main conference, and then I think there's like a merchant side to it. So it's like 1, 2, 3, these three different kind of sections.
That's awesome.
And I think
dude.
it's super smart to be able to keep it both like a congress and a conference, because I got to tell you, like, I got a chance. It was great. Like, I got a chance to sit around with Amari and Johannes Vermorel, who's working on the Terab project, which is like terabyte blocks. Brilliant dude. Gave us some great ideas for security for Cointext that I think is going to allow us to be able to open source the code, which is super, super amazing. And, spent a lot of time talking with Roger Ver, a lot of time talking with Roger. Spent some time talking with Craig Wright. Didn't get a chance to really talk with Jihan, but what was interesting was, so there you saw that. You saw where everybody's head is at.
Yeah.
Everybody's head is on, let's increase adoption, let's bring this to the world, let's try to free the world. My talk on my panel was very much where I was at with it as well. And then
Yeah,
you
I saw
get,
it on Twitter.
but what's interesting is that then you get this type of stuff. So do this Cobra Evil thing. So this was the response. This was the response on Twitter. So Cobra, upon seeing there was a panel with Roger Ver, Craig Wright, and Jihan Wu. It was one of the final things. And in it, somebody asked Jihan Wu, they said, well, why are you still even mining BTC? Is it just a short-term profitability play? And he was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. It's just for the short term. Like we're more invested in BCH. And he also up there was like, I'm very impressed by Dash and their governance model and their treasury, which I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because I caught hell on Twitter for even suggesting that BCH might do something like that, when it's very interesting how it ended up turning out, which will be our second story. But so here's what came from Cobra. He said, 3 of the most evil men in crypto on the same stage. Very nasty people. Jihan makes clear that miners will one day abandon Bitcoin. Better we abandon these hostile miners first with a proof of work change. So you can come back to us. I found it. Where can you?
On the desktop on the.
Oh Jesus! Did we
Yeah.
lose ourselves again?
I try to keep it moving, but it's
Yeah,
still,
keep it
it's
moving,
still,
dude. Keep it moving. I think we're
No,
gonna
but
have to go with a
it'll
different.
still cut me off. I don't
We're
know
gonna have
why.
to go with a different remote desktop solution than this. Here, I'll send you over the code. No, but what I find interesting is that, people are people, and this was very much an exercise in sort of the human side, which is why I'm glad that I had the conversation that I had with Krista Rose before I left, because the human end of this whole thing, it's the interplay of the technology and humanity. But what I found interesting was that we're in we're clearly in a battle. It's hard to know like where the exact lines are. There's a memetic battle happening. There's no doubt about that. There's like a battle of memes going on for sure. But I'm still trying to figure out like to what end? To what end? Like what do we win? I'm not exactly sure. Like I think that we can start pulling away from when I say we, I say I think Bitcoin Cash after this, and it was good for us. I think again, and I've said this, and it's weird because I've kept trying to have this topic on the show with a guest, and every time it falls apart. But the topic being the importance of meeting people in person in this space. Like the importance of the human interaction, if for nothing else than, things can get pretty heated in tweets online, but it's
Yeah.
something completely different when like you meet somebody, you meet their like in real life avatar, the real human being, you shake their hand, you sit down with them, you actually hear their tone, you see them smile, you joke around, you have a drink. I think the level of respect that you end up having for that person, this has been my experience, the level of respect that you end up having for that person as you have serious discussions then in the sort of Twitter sphere or on Reddit or whatever. Reddit less so, it's way more anonymous, but certainly in the Twitter sphere is important, which is another thing that I see that's different about, I would say that Dash is the least anonymous blockchain.
Hmm.
Well, and I think Dash it disincentivizes anonymity because you're not going to get a proposal funded if you're anonymous, right? So all of
Wow.
the main voices in Dash who are living off Dash, the only reason they're able to live off Dash is because they put in a proposal with their face on it and said, I'm going to do a video, I'm going to go promote, I'm going to do this. I'm a real world person. And that's that, and so the people who are voting on the funding are like, okay, we'll fund you. BTC is by far the most anonymous chain, the most anonymous people.
Hmm.
And then you've got, so there were a few people. What was weird was I encountered a few people at this conference who were at first almost like remiss to tell me what their online handle was because they were an admitted troll.
Oh shit.
Right? They're like, oh, I don't know because I say some things that are like not politically correct. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, tell me who you, oh, okay, you're that person. Oh, you're that person. But BCH is still yet very, very anonymous. And I just find it interesting that Cobra, who is the head of, who is the administrator of Bitcoin.org, is an anonymous person. For an
Right.
anonymous individual to say three of the most evil men in crypto on the same stage, it's like, dude, you won't even show your face.
That's crazy. Well, let's talk about that too for a second because I was thinking about what you were talking about with Jordan Peterson and being the prophet, and a lot of the arguments and the people that try to attack him. And what I was thinking was the reason why the prophet is attacked is because the person attacking has a sense that they're right.
That the
And
prophet,
with
oh, of course.
And also what they're doing, the person attacking is they're questioning their own beliefs. So
Oh,
they're
yeah.
they're not even like arguing with the prophet or with the person that's right. They're arguing with themselves, you know?
Well, because I mean, Chris DeRose said this, that the real problem is that what they're realizing is that they didn't reason their way. They didn't reason their way
Right.
to their conclusions, and they're seeing that, like, oh shit, it really was unreasonable, and then they have to destroy the other side
The
in that
other side.
case.
They have to
Right.
protect their beliefs and their ecosystem and their, the things that they believe in by and what happens is they start questioning that ecosystem and questioning the things to protect it,
So
and to
so
make
so there was an interesting, speaking of, and it's just like speaking to the interesting aspect of psychology, and I think I can speak to it as well, having been on a reality show
Mhm.
where they very much made caricatures out of myself and my co-stars, which is like you have to do to have a narrative, right? Like it's whenever you have these sort of ensemble casts and you're going to do like a buddy film or like
Yeah.
a superhero movie, or it doesn't matter what it is. In order to speed up the narrative, you have to very much have the characters be caricatures, right?
Huh.
They need to be as one dimensional as possible so that they can fill a particular um, place
Archetype.
in the narrative structure. You understand what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And that doesn't matter
Hmm.
whether, like, dude, totally, like, look at Avengers, Justice League, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, who these individuals, they have to be one-dimensional characters, right? Now, no human being is a one-dimensional character. But what
Hmm.
I saw being on a reality show for now, I was lucky because I really felt like my character got a chance to evolve because I was very much a blank slate in the early going because
Hmm.
I hadn't I didn't have a character that I was trying to push, if that makes sense. So what ends up happening is like this feedback loop of the between the person who's creating the narrative or sort of crafting the narrative through
Hmm.
the either the editing or the producing, and the individual who's playing the character.
We've seen this recently with the shootings too, with the
Sure,
David Hogg.
sure, sure. This is this is kind of like the reflexivity that happens in
Right.
that realm, right? Is that first you put forward a kind of a rough draft of the person that you sort of want to present to the world, the persona you want to present to the world,
Hmm.
and then in the process of it, like, so then the either your fans or your critics pick that up, and then they push forward even more what they're sort of seeing from it.
Hmm.
And then because they're seeing it, you play it up, right? And this is just, if you're unaware of it, that's the whole thing. If you're not fully aware, see, I got to watch this happening where I'm blessed is I got to examine it happening with four other guys who were moving down the exact same path as me,
Mm.
which is I think very rare, right? So
Right.
so here we all are. We're all having this experience. I'm just like being the observer that I am. I'm like, this is such a unique experience. I just want to take in
Hmm.
every single aspect of this that I possibly can. And what I saw was there were a couple of characters, a couple of the guys on the show who took on a bad boy role,
Hmm.
right? And it's like, that's unfortunately, that's one that you can never, it's so hard to escape,
Hmm.
right? That it just starts piling and piling and piling until just there's this dark aspect. So I had this really interesting interaction with Craig Wright, and I'm wondering how this is going to play out. Right? We've had Craig on the show.
Yep.
They're one of the most controversial people in the space. Right?
Hmm.
Is he Satoshi Nakamoto? Is he not Satoshi Nakamoto? I've withheld a lot of my thoughts on this because I don't really think that it's that important, but I find him fascinating. And if the people who were watching saw that video and saw like the pieces with him, he had on like this all black, like Johnny Cash, all
Yeah.
black three-piece suit. It was like black, with the black vest, black shirt, black tie, and then he had like a gold tie pin that was pretty big. I think it maybe had a jewel or something in it like that, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe like a diamond thing, but it was super blingy. But that was the only blingy thing. All the rest, all black, and the lining on the coat was deep red interior, right? So it was like, well, you're wearing the outfit of either the bad guy cowboy, all you need is the
Yeah.
hat, or like the devil, right? Like
Hmm.
if you're gonna have the devil in a movie, like that's what he's wearing,
Hmm.
you know. And so, but it was a great looking suit. Like it really was a fucking beautiful suit. And so at lunch, I saw him, said, "Hey, what's up?" And commented, I was like, "Man, this is a gorgeous suit. Like I love what you're wearing." And he was like, "Well, yeah, Luke Jr. has turned me. I used to be Darth Vader, and now I'm the Emperor on his little Star Wars." So,
Oh
so
shit.
put this up. Luke Jr., who's like the most insane developer on the side of Bitcoin Core, put up the Star Wars thing. There you go. So this is like his background, and it's just so interesting. So like the good guys, the Jedi's, are all the like, the core and Blockstream
Yeah.
people, and then all the evil people are the Bitcoin Cash people. And then you see Craig Wright as the emperor down there. He was like, "Oh, well, Luke has made me the emperor, so now I'm just going to own it." And so you see, like, you see this feedback. And so then he does that. And then it's like 3 of the most evil men on stage. And it's just really weird. Like, I would hate for, I think it's a, I think, and this is just like, we're gonna see how that plays out, but it's really not that good for anybody. It's not that, like, it's not really all that positive. It's nothing but mimetic ammunition to decide, oh, I'm gonna be the bad guy. I'm gonna be the bad guy. I will just put it out there to anybody. If you're ever in this situation, don't willingly pick that. Don't willingly pick that. It may seem fun in the short term, but it's not. You believe me, you don't want to be the bad boy, because you can never come around from that, and that's the most one-dimensional. The villain's always the most one-dimensional character. Because you know why? The villain never grows. The second the villain grows, they're no longer the villain. They might be like an anti-hero at that point. You can come back to us, dude. You don't need to leave that there.
It kicked me off again.
Jesus Christ, dude. What's happening?
It doesn't matter if I click or not. It'll just kick me off.
I don't understand why that is. Let me send you this access code again.
Clicking.
Yeah, we've got to find another solution on this, or I've got to figure out how to set the settings. But I do have to say, I'm actually rather impressed with the fact that, like, if this is the only hiccup through this whole thing, like, this is totally fixable.
Yeah.
Totally fixable. What's interesting is I would love to be able to move this off of this machine, and for you to be, but I may have to, I think I may have to go in and finagle the code and see what we could do. Okay, so let's talk about some of the, so this was interesting. Like, so this was kind of the start of watching how the other side culturally, and I think it's very important that it's like, go back to the Star Wars thing, because I think this is very important, right? It's very important that this is a grown man, okay? Let's just deal with that fact for just a second. Like, when I was 6 years old, I had like an all Star Wars room. I had like the Star Wars bed sheets and pillow. I had the action figures, you know, and the whole nine. When I was 6. Like, the thought that I think of myself, I am now, mind you, this is someone whose software is moving millions of dollars around. This is someone who people are trusting with the security, or who wants to be trusted with the security of the funds of average everyday people, who envisions himself as being Luke Skywalker. What's going on, dude? Are you okay, Christian?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Who envisions himself as being Luke Skywalker. How old are you? How old are you? This is my question. Like, how old are you? And that you're going to put people's faces that you don't like as the bad guys.
Seriously.
And the people that you do like as the good guys. How fucking old are you? And the thing with this particular conference was, as you could see if you were watching, that it was a very adult conference. Like, the people there were there to do adult things and to change the world in an adult way. There was not bullshit. Like, it was highly produced by real professionals. There was a lot of money spent. And then afterwards, so the conference was one day. After the conference, Calvin Ayre did a thank you party for, he's a billionaire, mind you, and he's a gambling billionaire. And people know what his lifestyle is like. And it was his birthday.
Oh, shit.
It was his birthday. So he was like, I'm going to throw like a little birthday party. And it was an invite as basically a thank you to his staff, the organizers, and the presenters. Right? Basically a private sort of, and a few VIPs. And so he was like, invited people out, got this sick yacht, put up this boat pics, not yacht pic, boat pics. Okay, so then he tweets this, boat party in Hong Kong with the CoinGeekers, right? So there's, so I'm in there, you see Craig Wright up front, but it's like, next to me is like Amari Sachet, Johannes Vermeulen's down there on the ground. Like it's a ton of people. Alex Agut from Handcash, Lorian Gamaroff is there, Calvin's there, of course. So you've got all these people, and you know, some ladies in bikinis as well. Some of whom are big BCH evangelists as well. So you know, I think Calvin may have brought like 5 or 6 female friends of his who all sort of hung out together the whole day. So it was like champagne was flowing, wine, and it was a nice barbecue. They towed a boat, and people were out swimming and wakeboarding and doing the whole nine. And so adults, right? You just finished off, I've been in, you can come back to us. I've been in an event promotion, and we've promoted events ourselves, right? Even you and I together. It's fucking hard. And putting on an event of the level that they put on, it's months and months of work of dozens of people. And I will tell you, this thing went off without a hiccup. I think there was maybe one little slip up where Jimmy said somebody's name who wasn't coming out. But besides that, the entire day was smooth. And everything before and after. Everything before and after, dude. There was a person waiting at my gate to grab me and get me through customs. And like, it was just like, everything was top notch. You know,
class.
Every need handled world class. And so afterwards, it's like, you guys did such a great job. Here's a reward, and we're gonna party. And I would just want to thank everybody for being here. And it's a chance for you to all interact with each other. So we go out on this boat, adults, right? This is how adults spend time with each other. If there's like if you go to a conference in Vegas, it's very, very likely if you're with a major company, there's going to be, at some point, you're going to be at bottle service, at one of the top nightclubs, getting pampered, or maybe a very, very nice dinner at a 5-star restaurant with complimentary champagne and the whole nine, or a private reception somewhere. That's how adults spend time. That's what adults do. But here's the response. Boat troll.
Oh, shit.
Another anon. Yup, too many bikinis, not enough beards. Makes me wonder who can produce any code on this boat. Except 90% of the people on that boat could write code. Like, where is the... Like, what, you can, and at least one of the women in a bikini in the front row is a game designer. Like, just because you take care of yourself and you're fit means you can't code? The fuck are you talking about? They're not mutually exclusive from each other. Some of the most fit people I've ever known are coders. You come back to us. There's this great quote from Daniel Moxney, the Danimal, where he's like, it's always surprising to me that the most intelligent people in the world, he's talking about academics in this case, for the most part have not been able to figure out how much better their life would be if they would just be in the gym 3 days a week. It's like, are you really that smart? Are you really that smart that you can't figure out that your life will be better if you're fit and well-groomed and can dress well? That your life, you're supposedly smart and you can't fucking figure that out?
Seriously, dude.
You can't figure that out? So this was the other thing, is that, look, this world, and I think that it's something in a way that people should start judging which team they're going to get behind in this regard. You know, so much of this is about people. And some of the most valuable people at this conference were non-technical people. They were evangelists. They were people who were just pushing it on the ground. Some of the people who have been the most instrumental in pushing CoinText forward, people who are having meetups, lots of meetup organizers there. Lots of meetup organizers there.
That's cool.
Right? Many of them very non-technical. And the thing is, if we're going to do this, it's going to take majority non-technical people.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because those are the people that will build and give the vision to people that are, you know, and non-technical, and the people that will benefit the most.
It's up to the technical people to make it easy to use for non-technical people.
Exactly.
So, if we know that that's going to be key to which one of these is going to win, then it should stand to reason that the team you want to get behind are going to be the team of, particularly when you look at the technical people, who are also the most socially savvy.
Yeah.
Who are able to interact with non-technical people, because
And have
that's
relationships.
because it's compassion. I have to be, this is one of the big problems, like, it's so much so that it's a cliche. Like, you can Google UI designed by engineers. Like, it's a cliche in engineering that it's like, engineers make shit user interfaces. Because they're just like, oh, if you're too stupid to figure out how to use that, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, it's not about being too stupid. People aren't stupid. It's just people's intelligences and their sensitivities are different. And we see the companies that win are the ones that make beautiful, easy to use user interfaces, like Apple. Prime example. Right? And then all the other manufacturers have followed after them. Samsung makes beautiful interfaces. But it's because they have to compete with Apple. And beautiful and easy to use. That's the key.
Simplicity. It comes down to
Simplicity.
simplicity.
But you know what? You don't value simplicity if you don't have compassion for non-technical people. You don't value you don't even understand what is simple unless you have some amount of social savvy. Right? Unless you're socially aware. And so that was something that I noticed where I was like, "Oh, I do find it very interesting that we all were happy to get on this boat." We all were happy to get on this boat and go and enjoy ourselves like any normal human being would be happy to. But you know what? About halfway through, of course, techies going to be techies. There was a 3-level boat. The second level of the boat was like all the devs were in there, deep in conversation about how to move this thing forward on a technical level, and a really high level technical discussion taking place. Of course, because that's what people are going to end up doing.
Yeah,
but everybody else
natural.
everybody else didn't have to be involved in that conversation. They were water skiing and swimming and drinking downstairs and upstairs sunbathing and talking about whatever, and it's just like great. And the finance people were talking about finance, and that's being an adult. That's being an adult. Like, it's going to take adults. This has been a toy and a novelty, and like, it's been in the realm of software, and I know what software is like. But it's like, if we're going to have a culture that, to go back to the idea that like, these are the new nations. These nations are going to be made up of all kinds of people from all walks of life, with all different sorts of temperaments and sensitivities, with all different levels of skill and intelligence, and it's got to work for everybody. And there's got to be a place for everybody. More importantly, there's got to be a place. So, you saw what is happening on the BCH side. Like, the aesthetic preferences of the BCH side. Show this yacht pic, just so that you can get an idea of the yacht that Calvin got for us.
Wow.
That's us getting ready to go on. Sick. This thing was sick,
dude.
Crazy. But what was going on at Consensus? Like, let me show you what those people who were trolling, let me show you what they prefer. The ones who are like, too many bikinis, not enough beards. But here's what they prefer. Go ahead, Magical, throw this up. There you go. Magical crypto friends.
Oh my god.
Magical crypto friends. Again, how fucking old are you? Like, that's Samson Mao. Who's it? What is it? CSO, chief what officer? Chief strategic officer, something like that, of Blockstream. And Charlie Lee, who's invented who is the one who's the founder, I guess, of LTC, of Litecoin. Dude, these guys are in t-shirts like panda,
With like
lion,
emojis
chicken,
on
and
it.
fluffy pony,
Looks like a cereal box or something.
all out of shape, right? Ill-fitting clothing, just looking just like, no, who would even want to talk to you? But no, but that's the side who's like, oh, but at least they're not wearing bikinis. At least they can code. I don't want to spend any time with these people. And the thing is that the average individual is going to want to go on the boat. They want to go on the
Right, exactly.
boat. They don't want
And
to
that,
go to the Magical Crypto Friends show.
hmm
And we need
And
to appeal to the average person.
what's interesting about that too is you can that's going to translate on that's the micro level, like the smaller scale, but that's going to translate on the macro level
Of
too. So
course.
like the network, the software, the user
course.
experience, all of that stuff is going to be carried on the same way.
Well, because it's people, right? So it's like what you value as an individual translates into what you create and you value in your work. They're not separate from one another. They're not separate things. Like this is a creative pursuit. You're going to bring to it to your projects what you bring to your average everyday life. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. Like they're not separated. So, that to me was super interesting and something that I think is important to pay attention to. So that's in relation to, because I had put out a tweet where I said, well, we know BTC is the orthodoxy, right? That's the orthodoxy, and it's just it's looking a mess compared to what I saw at CoinGeek. It's like it just made BTC just look a mess, right? But I've said from the other side, and I've been one of the people who's been like, pay attention to Dash, pay attention to Dash. Like they've got an economic incentive that BCH doesn't have in that they're paying devs like straight out the blockchain, right? But then as I'm leaving, the day that I actually, the car had come downstairs for me to take me to the airport, right? They sent a town car, paid for a town car for me to take me to, it was top flight, bro. Like,
sounds sick, dude.
They treated the presenters like so good, which is, yeah, why the hell wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You're trying to woo talented people in a voluntary way, in a positive way. You're using positive reinforcement to get them to work towards the end that you want. CoinGeek is a major miner of BCH, and they're heavily invested in BCH. It's like, oh, well, here's this talent out here that can choose another blockchain. Let's make sure no other blockchain treats them better.
Yep.
Economic incentives. Smart. So to put up this miner tweet. So as I'm getting back onto the, the car was downstairs, then I realized, I left my charger in the room. So I ran up. As I get in the elevator, someone very, very high up in the space, very high up, household name, I had heard that there was a meeting with some of the miners. And I was like, oh, well, dude, what happened with these miners? And so then I put up this tweet after I was told this. Breaking Bitcoin Cash news. A little birdie just told me that the major mining pools have agreed to establish a treasury and start funding BCH development from their block rewards. Huge.
Wow.
Which brings us to news number 2. Because this is important. I want to talk about this because this lays out, news number 2. This lays out the next sort of, BCH and Dash they are very similar in terms of the user experience. They both have, and I just, within the past couple weeks, have been doing this exploration, and so that's why I was interested in Dash, or at least interested in watching Dash. Both have zero conf. Both have 1 Satoshi per byte fees. The software, the integration is very, very similar. So between those two, what's different is Dash has a governance model. And so I want to, I guess first what I'll get into is what this deal was with the BCH miners. Throw up this pools deal. And I'll just read, this is from Bits Online. Title is Miners Consider Using Bitcoin Cash Block Reward to Fund Development. A group of miners, mining pools, and other community influencers met today in Hong Kong to discuss plans to fund Bitcoin Cash infrastructure development. Those plans could see a portion of the BCH block reward supporting the careers of professional developers, a model that has worked well for other cryptocurrencies such as Dash. Present at the Bitmain-sponsored meeting were representatives from Via BTC, BTC.top, Antpool, and Bitcoin ABC, among many others, including well-known names like Bitmain CEO Jihan Wu, SBI Bit's Jerry Chan, Electron Cash developer Jonald Fuchball, and Roger Ver. Places were also reserved for nChain's Jimmy Nguyen and Craig Wright, though neither attended in person. Bitmain's Jiazi Zhang introduced Bitcoin Cash's 4 main goals: innovation for the protocol, large block sizes, more infrastructure, apps, and developers / people, and being better at spreading the word. Other blockchain communities like Dash and Ethereum, he said, were already active in their efforts to support development and promote awareness. Fundraising was important to drive the latter 2 goals. Zhang added, since outsiders don't know how to join us, and the need to attract more professionals to a community that is not formally organized or sustainable over the long term in its present form. The suggested model would have miners vote on specific development proposals via multi-signature transactions using their keys. A simple majority signaling support via code in op return would trigger a release of the funds, while no code would indicate objection to the proposal. There's no option to abstain from voting. The proposal would include details on how much funding was required and how much of the block reward would be used. The idea is for proposals to have a finite funding limit rather than receiving ongoing regular payments. Points of contention included just what percentage of the block reward should be used and whether any at all would be a disincentive for miners to stay with BCH, driving them back to BTC. Suggestions were 5 to 10%. However, Veer pointed out that as little as 1% could provide a healthy boost. Another was whether such a model could become corrupted. Meeting participants appeared to favor supporting individual projects rather than general BCH groups or foundations. Commenting that he was surprised and pleased to see the idea being discussed, Veer wanted to kick things off immediately, suggesting a smaller sized trial fund and backing projects such as protocol software Bitcoin ABC. So, Christian, let's talk about, I don't know whether to start with Dash. I mean, I guess maybe we start with Dash. So basically, what's interesting about Dash is, like I say, it's very much like BCH. It's a Bitcoin clone, right? So it comes from out of Bitcoin, but it didn't move towards the SegWit core Bitcoin when that shift happened. It stayed very much in the true vision of Satoshi, just like BCH did, right? So meaning low fees, basically instant transactions. It's got a few little differences, like the confirmation time is less. It's 2.5 minutes, I believe, as opposed to 10 minutes. There's some pluses and some minuses to that, but it's irrelevant to this point. What's different about it is when traditionally how Bitcoin works is the miners are doing proof of work mining, and they're looking to find blocks. They're doing a very, very hard math problem. And out of all those miners, the one who solves the math problem first is rewarded with the block reward and the mining fees that go along with the block reward. So it started out with so the first, in the early blocks, you got 50 BTC. You got 50 Bitcoin if you were the miner that found the block. And then if there were any transactions that went through, you also got those mining fees if you were the miner that found the block. Now, every 210,000, I want to be sure I believe it's 210,000. I'm almost positive, but somebody could look it up. I could have the number wrong. 210,000 blocks, it cuts in half. So at block 210,001, the miner who finds that will get 25. And at 420,001, the miner who finds that will get 12.5, right? And it keeps halving down over time until there are none left. But it takes a very, very long time because you get this like half-life. Yeah. Although, so right now, there's only it's a total of 21 million Bitcoin. There's already 19 million have basically been mined. So there's only about 3 million on either one of the BTC or BCH. There's not really that many left. So, and once they're done, once that block reward is done, then it goes to all miner fees. Okay. So what made Dash different was Evan Duffield, who's basically the creator of Dash, added in this governance system because he saw this years ago. He saw the fact that, like, well, there's a competitive advantage to a blockchain that will automatically take a portion of the block reward and use it to basically fund developers that will
Yeah.
basically use it to support the human beings, the actual, because at the end of the day it's going to take actual man hours to make this happen. Now, there's a lot of ways that you could do this. You could rely just on the market and hope that a solution comes along, or you could say,
Hmm.
no, I'm going to bake it into the protocol, which is basically what he did. So basically there's that
Smart.
block reward, instead of going straight to the miners, gets split three ways. So the miners get 45%. 45% goes to what are called master nodes. Now, these are basically what they're able to do is they put up a certain amount of Dash, and by putting up that Dash and basically putting it off into and locking it away, they're able to, they're a node, they don't mine, but what they are
Hmm.
able to do is they're able to vote on proposals that are funded by the remaining 10%. So you got 45% to the miners, 45% to the master nodes. That leaves 10% left over. So 10% of every block reward. So in this case, let's say it was 50, right? 10% of 10% of 50 is 5, right? It would be 5 Dash of every block. And so then that leaves you with the remaining 45, half of which 22 and a half go to the miner that found the block. 22 and a half go to prorated between the master nodes based on how many master nodes there are, right? It goes prorated out to them. And you can own more
Gotcha.
than one master node in all of this. So the master nodes are able to vote on proposals, and they have to spend all the money that's in the treasury. So every month, 10% of all of the block rewards are in a treasury, and they need to be spent. Okay.
So
This,
just to clarify,
go ahead.
the proposals are for developers that are creating apps
No, the
and
proposals could be for anything,
for anything. Okay.
which is why Dash is spending a lot. That's why you saw Dash on the airplane. An ad for Dash
Ah,
on the airplane.
gotcha.
Somebody
Okay.
made a proposal. I want to have Dash advertise on an airplane. We need to pay for the ads. Here's how much it costs. Here's what it's going to be. Will you fund this? And they said yes. That's how Dash ends up on an
That's
airplane,
pretty fucking cool.
right? I'm like, I want to make a point of sale app for Dash.
Hmm.
Boom. Dash is a major sponsor of many, many conferences and events. How does that happen? Someone puts in a proposal. Dash is the main sponsor of PorkFest this year. Somebody put in a proposal saying, sponsor PorkFest as a main sponsor. Here's what we're going to get, all of this. And now the master nodes get to vote. One vote per master node. And it's based on how much Dash you put aside. Does this make sense now? So that's
Yeah,
their governance
it's
model. It's very
right.
smart.
Hmm.
It's very smart. It's allowed Dash to have a much bigger profile than it otherwise would have, just based on its traffic, based on its price, based on anything else. It's got a huge profile because it put this model into place. Okay. So that's one model. There are some trade-offs to that model. And so I've been interested, and I've said, look, I don't know that this is the right model. I don't know. And this is what and I put out a tweet. People can go and look.
Yeah.
It was something like it's this convince tweet. Find this convince tweet on there. Convince. Where I was like, convince me to keep Cointex as BCH only and not enable a basket of currencies, maybe even including BTC, right? Oh boy. Oh boy. I sparked off a storm. Because I was like, but what about Dash? And I was bringing up the treasury and all of this. You can go back to us. I was bringing up the treasury and all of this, and people were like, oh my God, you're a Dash shield. You're going to move Cointex over to Dash. I can't believe what you're doing. You can't be a supporter of Dash and a supporter of BCH. You can't do this. And I'm like, listen. I have a vested interest to bet on who's gonna emerge as the winner. And what I
Yeah.
see is this. Dash from a technical standpoint, has all the things that BCH has, plus they have a model to pay developers, and I'm a developer. And if you pay me, that's a heavy incentive for me to move over to your blockchain. And so that was my whole thing, was that it was like, look, if I have to bet on where do the most talented developers go over time, they go where the money is.
Yep.
This is what I tried to explain to people. I was like, do you think it's just coincidence that the best soccer players in the world are also the highest paid soccer players in the world?
Yeah.
Do you find it to be a coincidence that the best fashion designers in the world are also able to demand the highest prices for their clothing? Like, is that just a coincidence that the best cars in the world also happen to be the most expensive cars in the world? Like, is this just a fucking coincidence? I think not.
Mm-hmm.
The most talented people are able to demand the highest price for their services in the market. Period. This is not a mystery. So if I'm looking at what chain are the most talented developers going to end up on, it's the one where they get paid the most. And there was only one chain at the time that was saying that where there was some sort of structure, where it wasn't just a free market making a decision that, oh, maybe I want to invest in this or not. Because here's the thing, that what Dash can do and is doing is Dash can invest, a proposal can, because they have to spend the money. Which means the proposal doesn't have to be a profit. It doesn't have to represent profit. It can be just research and development. It can be just pure marketing. It can be just pure PR. It has to be spent. Yeah, but those are super valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Just research and development that may not pan out to anything 9 times out of 10, but the one time that it does, it's a massive, like, it's so important. And there was just no facility for that inside BCH. So I was just making the argument that it's like, look, I'm trying to bet on a winner here, and I don't see how I don't see this shaking out on BCH. Now, what was interesting was Jihan Wu was talking a lot about this. So either we're on the same page. I'm assuming it wasn't my tweet and that whole interaction and all of that was why Jihan Wu was all about it. He'd clearly been thinking about it for a long time, right? So basically, what happened? Throw up this pie chart. Okay, so this is a pie chart of all of the mining, the latest Bitcoin Cash blocks by mining pool over the last 7 days. So you see there's still this big gray area of 27% that's like unknown, because it's not, whatever it is, they're not broadcasting who they are that's mining. Most people think that's Bitmain, which is Jihan Wu, which is Ant Pool. But if you look between, okay, so who was there at the table in this whole situation? It's very interesting. BTC.top, via BTC, Ant Pool, CoinGeek, SBI, and Bitcoin.com. That represents, if we don't even count the unknown, that represents like over 50%. I think it's something around 60%. And if we count in the unknown with it, that represents like 80%. So what we're basically talking about is 80% of the miners, you can come back to us, dude. 80% of the miners in this case. All right? Now that is a different model. If we have to name what this type of model is called, of them voluntarily deciding to sit down and that they are all going to participate in this thing voluntarily, who are otherwise competitors in a market, this is called a cartel. That's what this model is called. This governance model is called a cartel. Now, cartels are actually, I think the cartel is the natural organizational model, actually, if we really look at it, for miners. There's generally, with precious metals, with general resources, oil, OPEC is a cartel. Right? OPEC is a cartel. You set prices, you set standards, all of these things. The drug cartels. right?
Yeah.
Cartels are natural for this type of business. So basically what you've got now, so what I think is this. I think this basically indicates BTC is done. The battle has been won. I think BTC is over at this point. And here's why. Here's why. And I'll pause on this a little bit because I may have to take this out as a clip so that people understand why would these miners, who also happen to be the biggest miners of BTC, with the exception of CoinGeek, I think, and maybe Bitcoin.com. I don't know if I'll have to look and see if Bitcoin.com mines BTC, but the rest of them also mine BTC. But Jihan was on stage saying, well, this is a short term. And they're like, we want to build the cartel. And we, as a cartel, we want to build up BCH. Why? Why? Economic incentives. Very good reason. Here's the reason why. What is BTC? What is their project and projection for the future? What is it that they're relying on? We've covered it on the show. Lightning. The Lightning Network.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does Lightning Network work? Lightning works in that I open a channel, so that creates one on-chain transaction. That transaction pays the miners with a fee. One on-chain transaction. Then it goes on to the Lightning Network, and I can do 1 million transactions on that open channel. If I close it, yes, that's another transaction. But we can see that the goal, they're seeing what I've already said it's going to be. What it's going to be is there's going to be next to no transactions on the BTC blockchain. And when the block reward for mining BTC runs out, there's going to be almost no miner fees.
Oh, shit.
It'll all be moved onto Lightning. The miners don't get paid anything from Lightning. Only Lightning nodes get paid.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, what is BCH talking about? They just took the block size up to 32 megs. They're talking about we need to take it. There's a project. It's the Terab project. The idea is to do terabyte blocks. Terabytes. Millions of to be able to do millions of transactions a minute. When the block reward runs out, the miners will get paid from the mining fees on the millions of on-chain transactions. Now, you're a miner. You're a miner. You get paid by on-chain transactions. One group of people are like, we're going to move it all off-chain. And the other group of people is like, we're not even just going to put money on-chain. We're going to put messages on-chain. We're going to put all kinds of shit on-chain. And the miners are going to get paid a fee every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to put Twitter on chain. I don't believe in it, but we're going to put Twitter on chain. That would mean the miners would get paid every time somebody tweeted.
Crazy.
Which chain are you going to support?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Simple economics, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Simple economics.
It's a duh.
It's a duh. So I think that this is now the new. So BCH has obviously it's got the lead on this,
Mm-hmm.
but this is also what you got to understand is that these guys deciding they're going to do a governance model and they're going to do a cartel. There's trade-offs to a cartel. There's some huge trade-offs. One of the things that's people should just go and if you just type in like cartel economics, there's so much written about cartels. Like there are economists who do nothing but study the mechanisms of cartels. Rothbard and Mises talked about cartels. Hayek talked about cartels. They're a natural outcropping of the market, right? So here are some things about cartels. Cartels usually can be moved and bullied by the biggest member. The biggest member can usually move and bully the rest of the members in a cartel. So what is a cartel again? A cartel is a group of actors within the market. Generally, it's in a space that has a high barrier to entry. So what they're trying to do is they all get together, like they did, the main players, they decide we're going to be the only players in this market and nobody else is going to come into this market. We're going to decide between ourselves how we organize shit. We're going to set prices. We're going to set standards. But generally, it can be bullied by the person with the largest section of market share. If you want to see how this happens in a very informal sort of situation, go watch the series Narcos. Go watch the series Narcos, and you can see
the story of Vegas.
What's that?
Vegas too.
Vegas
is the
too.
Same.
Vegas is basically gambling cartels, right? And gaming machine cartels, and the mob. The mob were absolutely cartels. The five families, that was a cartel. These are natural, but again, also OPEC. There's also other mining cartels. There's gas cartels. There's all kinds of cartels. There's the phone companies are cartels. There's all kinds, right? So this is just a natural outcropping. So you've got on one side the beginning of a governance model, and that governance model is a cartel, at least in mining, which will look, they've decided. This is basically them deciding this is the chain that we're going to believe in long term. We're going to invest money in development. We're going to be able to retain the rock stars. We want the best, most talented people working on our chain. Okay, good. But cartels are naturally unstable. And there's very little holding these guys together. And so it is absolutely, potentially in the best interest of the little guys to fork at some point. To either change proof of work. Now, what Jihan Wu has in this case with Bitmain is he's also the biggest producer. So this could spur, on the production side, on the hardware side, like it's going to be very interesting to see if the cartel can outproduce and I don't even know what to call it, right? Dash's model. It's a different type of a model. It's more of I don't even know. It's like a grant. It's almost like a grant system, right? So it's almost the way that academia works.
Pretty clever.
Yeah, it's almost the way that academia works. It's really going to make Dash have to shape. I will tell you this: what it's going to do is it's going to raise the profile of Dash. Why is it going to raise the profile of Dash? It's going to raise the profile because now Dash can say, "Well, look, BCH is now trying to do what we've been doing for years. Come on over and check it out." And a lot of people are going to look, and a lot of people are not going to like the cartel model because it is a cartel, and it's like. There are a lot of negative connotations to the word cartel. And it scares a lot of people.
Almost all negative.
Yes. But, so there's a trade-off, right? Cartels are hyper efficient. They are hyper efficient at delivering scarce resources. Hyper efficient. That's why they work. That's why they become powerful fast. They're hyper efficient. Very little waste, which is what on the Dash side, there is a lot of waste because it's a bureaucracy. So those are the two negatives, right? Those are the two negative sides. One is a cartel and one is a bureaucracy. So what you've got with Dash is I was told there are 70 people pulling a paycheck on their core team. So Dash has about $3 million a month. They've got 70 people of their core devs. There's pretty much one, for a long time there was only one Bitcoin ABC core dev. Like only one core dev for the main. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just gotta keep clicking.
Yeah, one core dev, Amari Sachet, for basically all of Bitcoin ABC. And that's all you need. And I was sitting at lunch having this discussion with Amari, and I was like, there's 70 developers. And he's like, no, there's not 70 developers. He's French. He's like, there's not 70 developers. I think there's like 35. I was like, that's so many developers. That's so many developers. So what ends up happening? Well, you got to find something for those people to do. So you start adding all kinds. So they've added all kind
A lot
of
of
weird
waste.
shit that's unnecessary. They've got instant send on a blockchain that's got zero conf. It's like you already have instant send. You have zero conf built in. Yeah, but we got to pay 35 guys a paycheck. And bureaucracy does nothing but grow. Right? And so it's like, I think it's something like 70% of the money goes to the core devs. So it's millions of dollars a month, right, to pay all these people. And it's just going to grow. And so what you wind up with is you wind up with a bureaucracy. Now, bureaucracies can be very effective over time, too. They can be. But we're just going to have to see if that bureaucracy stifles innovation, which I think it probably will. Because the one thing you could say about cartels is cartels are fucking innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Cartels, there is every economic incentive to innovate. Hyper innovative. And because they are still competitors with each other. That's the interesting thing. They are still competitors.
That's what drives the
Innovation. Because really what they're trying to do is they're participating for now in the cartel, but always underlying, again, watch Narcos, always underlying is they're looking for what could potentially give me the advantage to dip out of this cartel and take it on for myself, or to become the top, to take out the top dog in the cartel, because when you're the top dog in the cartel, you basically are able to control the narrative and to control the motion, right? So this is going to be what's interesting. The word cartel is going to get thrown around. I just want to front load that. That's going to be totally thrown around, and especially it's going to be funny to watch the BTC side is now going to have to attack both the Dash and BCH.
Oh, shit.
And Dash and BCH are going to be going back and forth. But here's what I would like to say about this. Like, so far for me, seeing this happen, my faith is renewed. My faith is renewed that Mises is right. That the free market will eventually handle it. But I'm also going to speak my mind, because who knows? Who knows if me speaking my mind on this fact forcefully didn't perhaps drive some of this to happen.
Yeah.
Who knows? It was somebody speaking their mind, and sometimes all it takes is a little kernel. So those of us thinking about it need to be talking about it. But it's like, seeing Amari Sachet out there, knowing that the main developer of Bitcoin ABC, the main BCH developer, he may like Star Wars, but he certainly likes Mises a lot more, because he's out there rocking an ANCAP shirt.
Yeah.
That gives me every. I don't know if Amari likes Star Wars. I don't know. He's never mentioned anything to me, and he doesn't have it on his profile like Luke Jr. Right? He's in the real world of economics. And so it gives me great, and he was at that meeting, but it gives me great hope that it's like, okay, yeah, this is real. We're seeing everything that Mises said, everything that Rothbard said, everything that Hayek said, coming to pass in this economic experiment that is Bitcoin. But here's the one thing that I want to say to BCH people about, and this is very important, because the narrative coming from BCH, and I've heard it already, and I've combated it, is they say that Dash's model is a tax. And here's what I want to say about that narrative. First, let me give you the definition of tax. This is the definition of tax. Go ahead and pull up tax, I think it is there. Tax, noun, a compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits, or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. Let me read it again. A compulsory contribution to state revenue, my emphasis added, levied by the government on workers' income and business profits, or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. So, Christian, leave that up there. But with that definition, What has to be in existence in order for there to be a tax? There are some key words in there. The state and a
Government.
government. And the state, you can come back to us. So this is why it's important that we use correct words, because you make yourself look like an idiot when you don't. And it's just propaganda, and it's easy to fight propaganda, and you don't bring up a straw man, you bring up a steel man. You argue against what the other person's actually said and done, rather than just throwing propaganda out. And because it's one of two things. Either you are just purposely throwing propaganda, or you're ignorant of economics. And you didn't even stop to read the definition of the damn word. What is the state? Here's the definition of the state, and it's a tax is a compulsory, meaning forced, compulsory contribution to state revenue. Well, compulsory contribution is theft. You need to contribute to my pockets, but it's compulsory. Compulsory comes from compelled, meaning coerced.
Mm-hmm.
And the state is that institution which claims a monopoly on violence in a given geographic area. When a state coerces you, they coerce you with violence. Violent coercion to have your money taken equals tax. If there's no violent coercion, it's not a tax. It's not a fucking tax. What it's more akin to, what the model is more akin to, is the model is more akin to I would say an equity agreement or a partnership in a venture, right? To where you are participating in this venture, and I'm going to play a role, you're going to play a role, somebody else is going to play a role, right? And we decide, okay, the role that I'm playing, I have 45% equity in the company. The role that you're playing, you have 45% equity in the company. The role that this person and we are going to take 10% from our revenue and put it into our savings or our R&D every month. Now, this is standard articles of incorporation shit.
Mm-hmm.
And Dash actually technically is a corporation. The masternodes, they figured out a way to do a trust and put a corporation to where they can actually own things. Like, it's much, much closer to a formal corporation. If I am in an equity agreement in a project with you, and before I begin to do anything with this organization, you say, okay, here's how it's laid out. You do this, you make 45%. You get 45% equity. I do this, I get 45% equity for my labor. And then we take 10% and put it away. That's not a tax.
No.
You're not taxing me. You and I have been in business together where we've said up front, okay, it's 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taxing me 50%. What kind of retarded shit is that? Anybody who said, hey man, Christian's taxing you. Christian's taxing you. Your partner's in a company together. He's clearly taxing you. It's like, dude, you're a fucking moron.
Mm-hmm. Oh, shit. Kicked off.
There we go.
I realized that when that thing pops up, so what it is, that thing pops up, you have to hit it.
I have to hit it. Aha.
Yeah. I can't do it.
So this is, I did want to get into this tax part because this is what's going to be brought up. Like, we're talking about two governance models. Neither one of them are the state. And people need to step outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes straight back to how we started this conversation, right? The state is Caesar. The state is Caesar. And we are in a mode of where we are going to have to render unto Caesar. Now, it's hard to know exactly what that is going to look like. I had some very, very interesting, so this is just to carry it forward. Are you able to connect?
Yeah, I'm typing it in right now.
Okay. I had some very, very interesting conversations with some of the people there, particularly the evangelists, the more evangelist side. And I think that we are just beginning to scratch the surface of governance models. But I even brought up in my panel that I think for us to start thinking about governance models is important. And it's not just governance models. We are naturally going to evolve governance models. And there are a lot. And it's so crazy to be like, wow, we're in the time that's like the founding fathers time, right?
Yeah,
Where
dude, it's
they
crazy.
were sitting. That's why I say it felt like a Congress, because these were the types of discussions that were being had of like, oh, well, how do we organize ourselves? How do we organize ourselves? Because we need to organize ourselves. So I think that there are some, I think the cash consortium, which is coming along, is interesting. Like, but what it's all going to be, I think for me as a voluntarist, the reason why I'm more hopeful for BCH is that everything we're talking about, these are all voluntary interactions,
Hmm.
right? It's not baked into the protocol where it's like, we have to spend this money on something. Because what happens when you have to spend the money on something is, potentially things that are actually detrimental to your cause end up getting money.
Right.
Because you do a lot less due diligence, and and politics also comes in, right? You get a model that looks a lot more like the government. Because, look, government agencies and bureaucracies have budgets that they have to spend. It's like use it or
Waste.
lose it. That's what they call it. If they don't
Hmm.
spend their whole budget, they get a reduced budget the next year. It's like, oh, well, you didn't need it, so we'll take it and we'll give it somewhere else. So all the economic incentive of a bureaucracy is to spend everything that they have plus a little bit more so that they can say, oh, well, we need extra for this, we need extra for this, we need extra for this. Well, what does this breed? This breeds waste. What's the biggest bureaucracy that has the biggest set budget for the American government? The military.
Hmm.
There's nothing but waste in the military. And so this is for me why I'm like, okay, well, first off, can it get shit done? Well, yes, it can. It's not a tax because we're not talking about violent coercion. In this case, it's it's voluntary participation in a particular model that is similar in look to the state. Similar in look to the state. And potentially can work to get the job done. But if I have to bet on free market voluntary competition
Hmm.
as versus a model that looks like the state, well, now minus the violence. That's what I find so interesting about this whole thing is that I'm like, it's solved. The violence is out. The violence is out. Here it is, folks, and this is why it's if people who are like, well, I don't know about this Bitcoin thing, it's like, no, you need to get involved right now. You're like
Yeah.
somebody sitting around talking about, I don't know about this United States of America thing. I don't know about this Declaration of Independence thing and this
Yeah.
Constitution
Seriously.
thing. It's happening right now, and not
Hmm.
only is it happening, there's no barrier to entry for you to be a founding father and a founding mother. Like everybody there was open to ideas, and everybody's looking for a place to put somebody in if they want to work at this thing and
And
decide how it shakes out.
there's an enormous amount of space for those people too. Look at what you said earlier. Like some of the heavy hitters in the room were the evangelists, not even
Oh,
the
absolutely,
developers.
absolutely. And it's going to be even more so. And it's like, so what's interesting is that even among the evangelists, like talk of governance models is really coming up. And but I think that there's what I can say about Bitcoin Cash is that there's so much more room to be creative with the governance model because it's not baked into the protocol.
Right.
Like the Dash governance model can't really evolve. It can't really evolve. And it's especially not going to evolve with the people who would be responsible for evolving it pulling a paycheck from it as the status quo.
Hmm. It's like putting a regulation on a business.
Of course
Like
it
the
is.
business is only going to meet the regulation. It's not going to be enticed to innovate and
That's right.
to create something that's better.
That's right. And so in this case, I mean, I think it's great. I do think that, look, these miners, they got their shit together, dude. They know what's up. Most of them are from China, but they're mining Bitcoin, right? So these guys know economics front to back. Front to back. So I mean, that's definitely that's where I'm so encouraged by it. That had been my. It's funny that it happened so fast, but time in the crypto space is like boom, 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 boom. But just the simple
Oh,
fact that
dude.
it was like weeks ago, weeks ago,
Yeah.
when I was bringing this up online, and it's funny because I'm just interested. I want to know if some of the people who were poo-pooing me about that and who were saying that I was like turning my back on BCH because I was suggesting that we should start thinking about something like this, and that Dash had a competitive advantage. I wonder if they'll have enough integrity to come around and be like, oh well, guess Vin was right. I bet you not. Some of them were there though, you know. And I don't need to be. Look, it's Vinstradamus. I do it all the time. I don't need people to tell me that I'm right, but I would like these people to start now. Don't say that I'm right. Just start working towards, because I don't want to be right. I just want to do the right thing. So now this is the right thing. Let's start working towards it. Let's start promoting it. Let's put the fire under everybody's ass to get this done. Because, dude, it's the most exciting thing. We're getting to remake the world in a brand new way. And it's
Well, and
it's really here. Like, it's really, really, really here right now.
Mhm. And when you put it into perspective too, like this is layman's terms. Like it's the new founding continent. It's the new founding America. You know what I mean? It's the new founding culture. And when people start to grasp that and say, well, no, I thought it was a digital currency. No, this is a whole new. It's beyond a movement. It's like a I don't even know how to
Well,
explain
see,
it. But
and this is what last episode was about. That it's like,
yeah,
what do you? We don't even, and that's why Krista Rose was like, well, this could be a new field. Like, this is clearly a new field. Well, because it is. It's a new thing. It's a new thing. But I've been talking about this. Like, it's a new. It's consensus-based governance. It's the rise of the matriarchy. It's all of these things. It's why I'm so interested, and it's so exciting to be a part of this whole thing. But I'm telling
yeah.
people, like, get involved. Get involved. Be a part of this thing, man, because it's like, especially if you have kids or you're planning on having kids, because, like, guess what? This is the world they're going to be living in.
Yep.
You can make a decision, and whether or not you have a massive impact in changing the way that things go, I don't think many of us do. I think that it's just like it's going to shake out the way it shakes out, you know. But of course, there are a few key individuals, and you never know if you're going to be a key individual that helps to move something forward. But it's like, even just to have a grasp of what the fuck is going on is going to help you and help your family.
And that's something that we talk about in the Bitcoin Cash meetup too. Is like, even just understanding what it is and how it works, you're light years ahead of everybody else.
Yes.
And it really just, all it takes to talk about, or to start to seed that idea into people's, so they understand it, so they can better themselves, is just talking about it.
No,
it's
agreed.
really that simple.
Agreed, 100%. And spending it, which is huge. So let's give them some places to spend it. I think the best place to spend it right now, let's do some shirts. See what we got. Well, there's the Dash shirt. Libertarians, make yourself great again. This is at governyourself.com. There's the Bitcoin Cash shirt in the green and also the orange. We have Simple Economics, Bitcoin Cash, which is what we've been talking about today. There's Dash. Feel the BS. Individual. Yeah, dude, the state is just done. Like, that's what's so, well, go back to us. It's what's so interesting to me is that, I've been all about that Jacques Ellul quote, there are no political solutions, there's only technological solutions, all the rest is propaganda, and it's like, oh yeah, dude. This just shows it. This shows it. And it's the way that it's happening, the speed that it's happening, the momentum that it's getting. These CoinGeek weeks, having these 2 times a year, and in addition to the other thing going on, and just wait until you have the collision of. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how New Hampshire shakes out. Actually, I'm glad that I get to be here because it's a Dash place, right? And they're sponsoring a lot of these events, and it's like. It is interesting that you can absolutely pay somebody to follow your ideology.
That box popped up.
What's that? You can pay somebody to follow your ideology. It's like, the economic incentives. The economic incentives. So hey, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe, maybe it also needs to be presented to the people on the BCH side that it's like just paying for development is not enough. You gotta buy, if you're gonna spend on mind share and pick a place. Pick a place and pick individuals that that can push this, that can definitely push this thing forward. So I think there's going to have to be, I think there's a huge space for content creators, a huge space for
Oh,
content creators,
huge, dude, huge.
with the money that's going to be flowing in. I mean, there already is, but it's like to go beyond, to really start grasping and going beyond. I hope that we're setting a good benchmark to be like, let's start talking about this as a culture. Let's start talking about this as a new nation. Let's start talking about this as that we are fellow countrymen with each other in this whole thing. You know what I mean? And like, and the other thing is, let's leave the doors open. Let's leave the doors
Well,
open on your chain and in your community for those persons, because there's going to be immigrants, right?
yeah,
Open open borders.
dude,
There's going to be
it's
immigrants that immigrate. Oh yeah, I was
it's
born
mind.
Dash, and now I'm immigrating to BCH.
Well, here's the thing too. What I was thinking about right now is like all this talk about tearing down the government and blah 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 and this and that, and like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not even necessary at this point.
It's not.
All you got to do is make a decision.
Yeah,
All you got to do
that's
is
it.
participate.
But it really shows that, well, that's all you ever had to do, really. And
Yeah,
that's
true.
what Jesus was saying all the way back then.
Oh man,
That's what he
fucking
was saying.
that shit. Yeah,
Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render unto God that which is God's. You decide. You decide how you want to store your value. You decide how you want to earn your income. You decide what currency is your currency, what currency is someone else's currency, what you decide what you believe in. Because that's
I
what he
love
was really saying.
man.
Do you believe in the power of the face on this coin, or do you believe in the power of God? Do you believe in the power of math? Do you believe in the power of logic, of reason, of community, of peace? That's what Bitcoin is.
Hmm.
That's what it is. And when you're ready to render unto those ideals, then that's how you bring in the kingdom of heaven. That's how you bring in a more peaceful, prosperous world. This is a message that has been echoing down through time, and yet it's always been a political solution. But now here's the technological solution, and we can manifest something that we've been embodying as human beings in Western culture. So of course it's here. How could it not
Yep.
be here?
And you could do it in the comfort of your home,
In the
with
comfort
your
of your home.
friends and family, with local
That's
businesses,
right.
with whoever that you choose.
With a smile on your face, non-combative, and you can help to free yourself and to free the world, to free future generations. Man, what a fucking great time to be alive, dude.
Dude, amazing.
What a great time to be
I
alive.
think I think this is one of my favorite episodes. I have to be
Really?
honest with you. Yeah.
I mean,
This is great.
I think the show's just going to get better and better and better, man. Better and
Yeah,
better.
that was a great way to put it, man.
Well,
Great
then maybe that's a good
story.
way to end it, because we're coming
Yeah.
up on it. So, all right, thank you for today, dude. Thank you so much. Let me say goodbye to
Thank
the
you.
people then. Well, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed the show. I really want to press upon you, if you're interested in this, you can educate yourself, but absolutely, if you can find a meetup in your area, do that. If you can get yourself to a conference, do that. Yes, of course, it's about the show, but it's also about actually meeting people in person. It changes everything, because we do commerce in person and we exchange value in person, and in person is the most important way to do it. If you want to come out to New Hampshire and you want to experience a community and a point in time where you'll be able to walk around and spend crypto, whether that's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dash. You want to hear people talk about crypto, I will be there. You can come to PorkFest next month. It's always a good time. I'll be speaking. There will be a lot of cryptocurrency talks there, and you can purchase just about everything there, from food to gifts, even maybe a little alcohol on the low. Don't tell anybody. and just exchange value, all kinds of crafts. Wonderful people who are trying to build this sort of a society. So yeah, come out and check out PorkFest for the whole week, or even ForkFest, which is the week before, which is completely decentralized, no tickets, no organizers. And so a lot of the people who are with Liberty Radio Network, which is LRN.FM, which we are also on with our podcast now, will be there. You can check out our podcast on iTunes and also on Stitcher. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And until then, stay free.